Did you know that the first ever tilt coaster actually opened 23 years ago? The original tilt coaster from Vekoma opened in 2002 in Taiwan. And I'm sure most of our listeners who are avid coaster enthusiasts have, of course, heard about this coaster, seen POVs, seen the iconic photos, which we're talking about Gravity Max, which is located at the Discovery World part of Lipao Land, which is like a resort in Taichung in Taiwan. And of course, tilt coasters are all the talk right now. And since we haven't gotten a chance to go out and ride Siren's Curse just yet, it's coming soon, we decided let's talk a little bit about your original.
Yeah, and like a lot of people are talking about Siren's Curse, like they've never heard or seen of such a thing, or that like it looks unsafe, and like, you know, I'll give it a couple years, see if there's an accident before I ride it. And it's like, bro, this ride has been operating for 23 years in Taiwan. A simpler layout, but like the same exact tilt function, just like a new track system and such. And it has operated without incident for 23 years in Taiwan. And then there's another secret tilt coaster
just around the corner
right here in Orlando at Universal Studios Florida. Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts, of course, famously begins with a tilt coaster drop. The whole station and such is like the highest elevated point of the ride. And then you dispatch, turn a corner, and the very first thing you do is a tilt track. It's not very tall, it's not a long drop, and it's not very steep, but it is very cool and very effective, and a great application of that system. So if anybody's wondering...
And I'm just happy that after all these years, finally we're seeing it enter the market. Yeah. Of course, we're getting 2 in the United States this year, and I'm sure there's talk of plenty more. I'm just so excited that finally... You know, I think most of us have questions, you know, will we actually ever see the follow-up to Gravity Max? And now here we are, 23 years later. Inversions, airtime, the vertical drop, Vekoma smoothness, it's all here. And a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings Radio. And today's episode is all about some really unique coaster types that we've just written on layovers, and we're just kind of discussed them a little bit. Of course, we've already kind of talked about Gravity Max in Taichung's Lipao Land in Taiwan. And I also wrote the Intamin Aquatrax. Talk about a trip of a ride at a Lottie World Adventure in Seoul in South Korea. And so we figured, you know what, let's step away from the UK for a second. Let's step away from Europe and America. We've done a lot of Europe and America content this season, and 2 China episodes, actually. So if you want to hear more Asia, there are 2 China episodes already live for this season. But now we're going to jump to Taiwan and South Korea, and we're going to talk about some unique rides for all sorts of reasons that they're unique, either setting or just the ride type. All of these coasters, I think, are worth talking about because they're all in kind of spectacular locations or layouts. Don't you think, all of them?
Absolutely.
How to think about it?
They're very scenic in their own special ways.
Very scenic in their own ways, yeah.
All of them are in these pretty iconic settings. Lipao Land is like, and I guess Jianfusan too, both of the Taiwanese parks, the major Taiwanese coaster parks are thick in the jungle. Really, any park that you go to in Taiwan is going to be enveloped.
Especially Jianfusan Fancy World. Because I would still say that Lipao Land, you drive by it on the bullet train and you see it right there. Yeah. Like, it's not far from the train tracks. And when you actually get to Taichung at the train station, it's like a quick 15-minute drive, and it's all kind of a developed area. It's like it is on a hill. And of course, everything in Taiwan is like covered in like tropical lushness. But when I took an Uber or a taxi out to Jianfusan Fancy World, that's when I was really like out there. Like, I was in like the farms for a good hour in an Uber, and then like up the mountain. I didn't have reception up there. I couldn't book a taxi. I had people helping me to get me out of there to the train station. That was still like 30 minutes away in Yunlin. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, either way, the settings are both fantastic. One is definitely a little more urban, though, than the other, I'd say.
And then Lottie World also has a great setting, especially the outdoor portion on the lagoon.
Yeah, but even the indoor portion, it's what a trip. It feels like a little ice rink that just blew up in RCT.
Yeah.
And now there's like a Vekoma looper running through the building.
Spectacular.
And of course it was designed as such, but yeah, it's quite fascinating. So yeah, we'll talk about all those. We're going to talk about Gravity Max because we're already on the topic. Yeah. And I'm going to have Alex start with that because Alex wrote it. God, you wrote it how many years for me? I wrote it in 2024. So you wrote it like 9 years before me. You wrote it like in a different timeline.
I went to Taiwan in 2015 with my cousin Caitlin, who lives in Hong Kong, and we hit the 3 major Taiwanese parks on like a long weekend. And
well, I wouldn't say the 3 major Taiwanese parks because there's 2 more parks I think that are just as major. But if you're gonna talk like North Taiwan,
maybe, I guess so.
Because of course you've got Formosa Aboriginal Village, and Ida World, which are both pretty big. But anyway,
I would say like
you did hit like the 3 big ones about Taipei-ish,
of the 5 that are the biggest priority probably for enthusiasts. Lufu maybe not as much as the other 2, but at least that one's convenient to Taipei because that's Taipei's regional park. But yeah, so John Fusan Fantasy World and Lipao Land were like the focus. And those were very exciting, like cool credits to get, especially at the time when I hadn't even ridden half the number of coasters that I've ridden now. But it just seemed like a right thing to do. It was in the middle of winter. It was the dead of winter. And it's like, well, where can we go? Like we didn't just want to hang out in Hong Kong the whole time. We're like, where should somewhere we can go where it's nice and warm?
Taiwan is perfect for the winter.
So we were 100%. Like, okay, let's go to Taiwan. Yeah. We thought about going to Universal Studios Singapore, but Battlestar Galactica had not reopened yet from its first retooling. So we were like, let's stave off on that. And we did Taiwan, and I'm so glad we did because we had a fabulous time at both of those parks. Lipao Land was like a ghost town, and it was a beautiful park, but it was clear that like not much had been changed since it had opened. These parks had all been open with their major coasters at least 10 years, maybe 15. And Lipao Land just was kind of a set it and forget it concept park. It was very colorful, but like not a lot had changed. And we rode Gravity Max. The only other people in the park were school kids, and we encouraged the school kids to come ride with us so that they could fill the train so that we would go. And at the time, it was one of the scariest roller coaster experiences of my life because it was just so different. Like the tilting mechanism on a coaster really is such a radically outlandish method of sending people down the lift hill. It's like truly thrilling. And especially in the back seat. I think a lot of people are catching on with this with Cedar Point with Siren's Curse. Even though the front seat...
Because your drop is like twice as high.
The front seat, it has like the visual of being at the end of the track. But man, you sit in the last row, I think it's even scarier. And definitely you get more of that drop. And as big Vekoma fans, as big like giant inverted boomerang fans, I loved the way that Gravity Max in Lipao Land was very giant inverted boomerang-esque in its like design and the trains and the way that it felt and the mechanisms.
Oh yeah,
it's very giant inverted boomerang coated. The ride layout itself.
Well, yeah, I mean, practically it does kind of feel like riding, even the way it tracks. Mm-hmm. Has a slight rumble to it, and of course you have the trains that are the what are they, MK12?
I think
I forgot the name.
MK 1200s.
They're not 1200s. They're not 1211s. Oh, I'm gonna look it up real quick.
And are they MK 1000s?
Because they're a unique kind of trains.
They've got some name on there. Anyways, the one thing about the ride that I felt like could have been improved on, because the setting was great, the visual drama of it dropping. If you're not familiar with the Lipao Land Gravity Max coaster layout, there's really not much to it. You drop straight down, you dive under the midway into a perfect U-turn that's completely enclosed under the midway. A very nice vertical loop, like a Tennessee Tornado-esque clothoid vertical loop, and then a double upward helix, and then the ride's over. So, like...
Yes, there are 1211 trains, by the way. They're MK 1211 trains.
There's not many
So they
of
have
those.
sides that are open. Yeah, they feel pretty much exactly like... The seats are, I think, pretty much identical to a jib.
It's like a sit-down looping version of the giant inverted boomerang train, basically.
Ideal, right?
But yeah, the one thing that I had wanted more out from that ride is like it starts out amazing and it rapidly, like the layout, like rapidly becomes less interesting. Because once you,
I mean, the layout's not very long, so by the time it doesn't get interesting anymore, you're already in the brake run.
So
because you start with your tilt.
It's like that fixed the one complaint, which is that it still has a fabulous roller coaster waiting for you after the drop, after the gimmick.
But you know what? Here's how I look at it. Back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, a gimmick was enough. Like doing the dive machine for, like we're going to talk about a clone in a couple minutes, but Oblivion is the perfect example. You could do just the drop, and this is the most marketable thing. Gravity Max, doing the tilt and then doing a loop and a helix, bam, wow, crazy, cannot believe this is real. But now we're looking at this day and age, 2025. Your dive machines have to be like Wrath of Rakshasa. They have to have like 6 inversions. Your tilt coasters, the tilt's all cool, but like you don't want your coaster to be a one-trick pony anymore because that's so 90s, that's so early 2000s. So now you're going to have a layout following that signature element. And I'm actually kind of glad to see that progression. Like we've now perfected the one thing that made the coasters really cool, and now that's almost becoming like a standard, and more so in the dive machine world, of course. But who knows? In the tilt coaster industry, we could start seeing a bunch of tilt machines that look really freaking spectacular. But luckily, they also do more than just tilt, which of course I think it's a natural progression. I'm just happy to see that progression on all kinds of coasters. Really,
Siren's Curse. I think when Cedar Point announced it, a lot of people didn't get it, or they didn't feel like it was a justifiable ride. Like it definitely, if you're not impressed by the gimmick of the tilt, like it just makes more sense when you're there and you're riding it, and like the gimmick really delivers, and then the ride layout delivers. But it's not a conventional looking ride layout. It's not a ton of inversions. It's not like these, not a ton of like Steel Vengeance style camelback humps. It's a very unusual, unpredictable layout that is very distinct of Vekoma's current design practices, and people are riding it and realizing like, wow, like this was, I think everybody had kind of moderate expectations of it, and they're being like blown away and realizing that like the tilt coaster gimmick really is worth the trouble. It really does deliver, not just visually, but experiencing it. And then the ride layout really does feel like a strong follow-up to this very strong beginning of a tilt coaster.
But yeah, so my experience on Gravity Max, I of course rode it years later, and I was kind of, I guess I was going to start right at the entrance to the ride. So the tilt is right next to the entrance, and then there's a ramp up to the station. But then when you get to the station building, believe it or not, there's 3 entire floors of switchbacks. Like the station length switchbacks for 3 floors. I was like, oh my God, how many people can they fit in this queue? Of course, like a lot of Asian theme parks, I think they grossly overestimated what their attendance would look like. But either way, on the day I went was a Saturday, and I went because I figured, best luck. First, I was on layover for work, but second of all, this seemed like the best luck to get it on a weekend. And good thing, too, because I showed up at opening. I was the very first person into the park. I mean, like I ran. And then the coaster didn't open for like another hour, but I stood there in front of it. And I was the first person in the station. So it all kind of worked out pretty nicely. Anyway, so you have your like oceans of switchbacks really on 3 levels, and then you have your station. You have a really nice view because the station is quite elevated. So if you imagine a ride, I would say the station is about halfway up the layout. So you have a decent length lift though, but it's not too big. And you have your drop, and that goes underground. And then you have a pretty, from my experience, a very intense turn. That turn in that tunnel is intense.
Yeah.
Then you fly into a really nice vertical loop. It's kind of shaped similar to a giant boomerang vertical loop. So you have a bit of air on the top. It's not like super clothoidy, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And then you shoot up into this downward helix and then into the brakes. And so you're quite elevated by the time you hit the final brakes. And then you turn into the station, which again to me is about halfway up the layout, maybe 1/3. So clever use of terrain and space. It's kind of a really compact ride. You think about yourself like a tilt coaster, especially if you look at Gravity Max, looks quite big. But it's a super compact ride. It all just fits in a pretty decent sized plot.
Like the whole ride.
Yeah. And then at this point, it's very lush jungly environment. I'm sure when you rode it was already lush too, because you rode it. Man, you rode it 13 years after opening, and I rode it another 9 years after you. So
since you rode it, either way, a paint job.
Yeah, the paint job looks great. So the paint job is now black supports, red track, much like kind of like X2 vibes, especially because the tracks are similar. And in fact, speaking of X2 vibes, the whole inspiration for that current look must have been X2 because the station, the walls are covered in this like volcanic, fiery-ish aesthetic that looks a lot like the X2 station, like the banners that say like, "Oh, you're a gladiator in the Colosseum of Thrill," like those kind of banners, right? But then without the X2 wording or logos, of course, it's the Gravity Max look, and then the Discovery World or Loop Outlet logos on it. So you can definitely tell that they were very inspired by X2. Ride itself, I mean, again, not much to talk about. The tilt is spectacular, and I prefer sitting in the back because when you tilt up, I mean, you're being lifted up off of the lift hill, and suddenly you're like rocketing into the sky. And of course, the view is the coolest in the front, I think, because you get to see the track connect and it's kind of edginess of it. But the train is like 6 cars long, like it's station length. You're quite high up if you're in the back. And then when you stare down, I mean, this is like giant inverted boomerang feeling, giant inverted boomerang vibes. It's like you're 200 plus feet over, in the air because of the tilt. And now you're staring down this abyss, really, like you're really high up. You know, like when you're riding the giant of a boomerang, you go backwards and you're like, oh my god, like we're actually really high up, especially if you're sitting in the back. And you can kind of stare down and you see that you really are about 200 feet over, in the air on this vertical tower. It's the exact same feeling, especially with these harnesses, as on Gravity Max. And then when you have that drop and then hit that tunnel, I mean, the speed at which you hit that tunnel, it's like kind of dangerous almost. Like I really feel like that's one of the most intense coasters in any moment on any coasters. That turn in underground.
Yeah.
And then you shoot into the vertical loop, and then you have your helix and then your brake run, which, again, there's not much to it, but it's a spectacular ride. I love
What's
it.
there is really strong.
Especially for 2002. I mean, this is, sorry, Janet Boomerang, to bring her back into it, but this is literally Jib era. This is the exact same year that Stuntfall opened, if I'm not mistaken. Or Stuntfall later?
Stuntfall opened in 2002. It was late.
Okay, yeah. So, it's the same era of Vekoma. So it's like beefy, bulky, fast Vekomas that track pretty well. It's definitely post SLC, initial SLC and Boomerang era Vekoma. Like I kind of find its own little category of Vekomas where they were doing a couple of more unique loopers too. There was that big looper
it's the same era
Korea
as like the Fantasy Island
exists.
Vekomas, Millennium and Odyssey.
100%. And of course, well, it is quite a bit older quite a bit newer than French Revolution. I kind of forgot how old French Revolution already is. So we'll talk about it a little bit later in the episode. But in a way, maybe because French Revolution is so unique, it kind of gave me like a quirkiness vibe to it. But those are not the same conversation.
I believe there's
really.
only 2 Vekoma looping coasters that have a single vertical loop and nothing else. And it's Gravity Max and French Revolution. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
Oh, see, there is a parallel.
I'm pretty
there.
sure
Great.
that they're
Awesome.
the only
Love that.
Vekomas
And
that have a
cool
single
helix.
vertical loop and no other inversions.
Okay.
Not like Arrow or
Great.
Schwarzkopf, where they had production model rides that featured a single vertical loop and nothing else.
True. So yeah, that's Gravity Max.
And the park is cute.
The original Tilt
Coaster. I don't
Coaster.
think they've added a single thing between opening and my visit and your visit, even though our visits were almost 10 years apart. I'm really glad you got to go and do this on a layover because I was so anxious about going back here to get these rides with you and then like it being closed or something because Gravity Max is notorious. It is very sensitive to wet weather and wind, and Taiwan is very prone to typhoons and monsoons, and so like these things don't mix. So I'm so glad that you got to do that on a layover and get that credit because now like we're even. Like you went and rode it by yourself. I got the credit. Like we're good. We'll focus on other things.
Yeah, I got a couple good rides on it. It was fun. It ran just how I'd expect a coaster to run.
Opposite problem. Caitlin and I were like waiting around for people to fill the train.
Oh no, it was busy.
You were waiting
but we still had to wait 15
in
minutes between dispatches because they would only dispatch every 15 minutes. Yeah. So every time a train came back, we'd have to like unload. They do like a whole inspection. Literally like a whole inspection, and then they would eventually start, assigning rows, and then they would go through this whole like safety card you had in your hand and this whole spiel they had to go over. Then they just stretches, and then finally they opened the air gates. At this point, it's been 10 minutes since the last train returned to the station. Then you sit, do your thing, they do a whole announcement, and then you go. And then once after 3 cycles, the maintenance team comes up. So every hour, the maintenance team comes up, and they do an inspection and cycle it again without anyone on it. So it's like, okay, so you get 3 cycles an hour, really, and the 4th cycle is a fake
So
cycle.
crazy.
So I was like, okay, let me get there early, get a couple rides, and I'm dip. I mean, I still spent like a good 2.5 hours there just to try and get on it 3 times, which I did, and then I still had time to make it over to the Yunlin area or Jefferson early afternoon. So it all worked out, but I literally only rode Gravity Max, and then I dipped.
Yeah.
I said, okay, this is it. Like,
We
I didn't
got
even see really anything on the
there's a kiddie
park.
coaster
Yeah.
that Caitlin and I rode. We were biding our time. Since the park was empty, we didn't need to camp out in front of Gravity Max to wait for it to open. So we did a lap around the park to bide our time and rode the kiddie coaster. I think we rode the Rapids ride, did some other stuff. And then the coaster finally out. And I only saw it run maybe 6 times. And 2 of those, it was empty. 3 of them I was riding, and the 4th one I was taking pictures, and that was it.
That's wild. Yeah. Well, either way, about the good experiences. I mean, my weather was great.
Yeah.
It was hot, of course. It was middle of July, I think, or June. It was June.
It was way
I think it was
hotter
June when I rode
on
it.
your visit
Either
than
way, it
mine.
was great. Yeah. So then we're gonna go to a park that's about more like an hour away, and this is Jefferson Fancy World, which is really located like on some jungle mountain
Super
hill.
isolated.
Kind of isolated, but so pretty. Oh my god, so pretty.
I felt like I was in Donkey Kong Country, like the very first level of Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo, where it's all just palm trees as far as the eye can see. I realized I was only really used to seeing palm trees, in a cultivated manner and not in a naturally occurring forest. So
it's funny because they do an afternoon ticket. Now I think about it, when I showed up, and it was like a half an hour before the half hour started, or whatever, like the second half of the day. And like, oh, you should wait. They're trying to not sell me a ticket because in half an hour it would be like however many new Taiwanese dollars cheaper. And I was like, no, I want to buy it right now because I don't know what I was thinking. Because it was, even though the park felt lively, it really wasn't like I had to wait for anything because operations were actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
So now I just bought the full fare ticket and went straight in. And then the park's layout is mad confusing because the coaster's on the backside where you also have the water park and most of the rides, the indoor area. But in the front side of the park is where they have like the gardens and I think museums and whatnot.
You have to climb your way up.
You have to really find your way around to the other side of the mountain first. Yeah.
And then that's where the station is for G5. And then you cascade down the mountain, and that's where all the other rides are.
And what's crazy is when you imagine like the height of G5, because G5 barely gets over the midway when it turns around and drops. But then when you're at the bottom of the water park, G5 is like eye level, the bottom of the drop. So the park is like, it's really a steep mountain, and everything is like escalators down the mountain.
Yeah, there's a good
or some walkways.
12 stories.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating.
Variation. The difference between the station for G5 and the station for the Floorless Coaster, that's 100 feet, easy.
Yeah, 100%. So that's very quite fascinating. So I guess we'll start talking about G5. So G5 is a clone of Oblivion at Alton Towers, except for this one, they bought it because it worked very well on the side of the mountain they already had. I'm convinced that this was almost like a plug and play because they had to dug out the tunnel for Oblivion, but then for G5, it was like, all right, well, we can just stick this on the side of a hill and it can just go off the hill. And even though there's still a small tunnel at the very bottom of the drop, it's not like Oblivion where the majority of its tunnel. It's really just the end of it. And then you blow up, and they did have to add quite some supports for that
was the
fan turn.
The big expense with this ride wasn't the layout, but telescoping those supports for the turnaround, because that part of the ride feels so different from Oblivion compared to
they're like two. It's almost feels like 2 different rides.
So different. It's hard to believe. I mean, they are a mirror image of each other, so technically it's all right turns versus left turns, but the drop feels so much bigger because so much less of it is obscured from view.
Covered.
And when you pull out of the drop, you feel like you are taking off into the sky. Whereas with
it really
with
is like that. You're really going up for a
time.
while. Yeah, it's true. To me, it felt like there was much more ride, even though there isn't much more ride, because the entire time you're kind of looking at it. And when you go up the lift and then you turn, there's a really beautiful scenic view because you are on like a hill, and then it's kind of flat all the way to the ocean, where you are like plateau, so you can really see almost the ocean, which is quite far away. So it's a really beautiful view of the land, and the farms and the forestation. And then you dive down, but then because the dive is not covered by a tunnel the whole time, you get to enjoy all the drive. Like Alex said, when you then pull back up, you're facing the sky and you see the giant, the giant fan turn that on Oblivion is only like ground level. Here you can see all of it happening as you go through it. You see the rest of the park kind of. I just felt like there was much more to it. And then you have your hop into the breaks because it's all so elevated and it is all not covered. I felt like there was much more to the ride. Like I could enjoy the ride much more than Oblivion. I will say I wrote this first and Oblivion second. So for me, maybe I think for Alex, the same thing for you, right? You wrote Oblivion second.
This was my G5 was my second ever tilt coaster. My first was the one at Dive Park, Krake. And I loved it, but I was surrounded by people who were not impressed because everyone had ridden the one at the Bush Park nearest them. Everyone had ridden Griffin and Oblivion and stuff. And then 6 months later, I rode Oblivion for the first time. That was my third dive coaster. And there's a lot to appreciate with Oblivion. And having just ridden it with you a couple months ago, I do love so much about that ride and like the whole lore and the aesthetic and stuff. It offers a little bit more of that kind of experience than G5 does. But
at the same time, though, G5, like you're in this plaza with some food stalls and whatnot. It's kind of vibey. And then, you just walk into the station because the station is practically one with the plaza. And there you have a couple of switchbacks that all lead to technically four gates. And they're all switchbacks in between. So you can load it all up and then fill it, but it's not busy. So really, it's just one gate kind of in the middle that actually ends up opening up. And then you walk in and then you can just sit down. And it felt so low key in a way. Like it felt so easy. And chill, and everything is on midway level. Like the station was like parked in the middle of a plaza,
like
and then it just takes off over it. Yeah, like it just feels like you're boarding, almost like roller coaster.
Like you just roll right boarding in.
Yeah, like there's no preamble. It's like you just walk, you take a turn, and suddenly you're like in a vehicle, and then you take off in the middle of the plaza, and the people can walk all around the lift hill. In a way, it just felt so nonchalant, so easy, so vibey.
Very matter of fact.
I kind of liked it. It was very warm out, of course. Water park right there. Like it felt very summery and chill and vibey. I don't know. I liked it. It was different, very different from Oblivion.
One thing we realized is that like even though the rides have the exact same layout, mechanically they're quite different because Oblivion has horizontal chain lift mechanisms on.
Which is that the only coaster that has that? Because I don't think I've seen it anywhere but Oblivion.
It's certainly unique, but it was. Like we talked about on the Alton Towers episode, this was related to allowing Oblivion to run 6 trains at a time. And so basically every moment of that ride from the final breaks to the holding break on the drop is controlled in such a way that they can space out the trains and send them out 2 at a time. Whereas obviously with G5, I don't think they even have more. I don't think they even bought more than 3 trains on it. Everything is totally analog on the turnarounds.
They do have 2 stations, and I think they have 4 trains for it, if I'm not mistaken. I wonder if I can find that information quickly here on RCDB or not. But I thought they had 4 trains. Apparently, they have 6 trains actually for it.
G5.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be curious to know if that's just being recorded on Roller Coaster Database.
I mean, surely it doesn't run that anymore.
Of Oblivion, but I would be shocked if they had more.
Oblivion has like 8. Oblivion could operate like 8 though. Don't they have more than 8 for Oblivion?
Oblivion, I think, has 7.
But I'm pretty sure I saw like 4 vehicles. Period. Like, I mean, it wasn't busy when I went, but
I would imagine that they only bought 4, but that Roller Coaster Database has 6 listed because that's like standard, maybe. That's how many can run on Oblivion, and since it's a clone, that's how they. I don't know. That's neither here nor there. I'd be shocked if Janfusen really thought they needed all of that capacity. But
I mean, there's a photo up here of 2023 where there's 1 train in the station, 4 parked on the transfer. So it's definitely possible.
Oh, maybe
that they had. There's 5 in this photo from 2023. So it's very possible that they still have that they had 6 at one point. Now they have 5.
How many transfer bays are there? It's probably.
They have 1. It's very long. It's 6 all the way.
It's 5 or 60.
It's quite long.
Maybe they do. But in any case, they certainly cleaned up the mechanical functions of this ride because unlike Oblivion, it does not have horizontal spacer chain lifts on these turns. Maybe that was just something they were able to engineer out for maintenance and cost reasons, but still keep the majority of the capacity. But anywho, I think G5 is the better ride, even though obviously Oblivion is the one that we owe the whole thing to. G5 is surprisingly substantial for a ride being a clone. I can't think of two installations of a technically identical coaster that could be more dissimilar.
Different. Yeah.
Than these two.
And then the same park has another B&M looper. Well, I guess G5 is not even a looper, but it has a B&M floatless coaster, which is called floatless coaster, also known as
Insane Speed Flying Car.
Insane Speed, that's what it is. Yeah, and like of course, like a typical Chinese or China adjacent roller coaster, it does have several names listed on the actual marquee for the ride. But this ride, I will say, is actually quite good. I really enjoyed it. It is a variation of sorts of the coaster, the Batman The Dark Knight floatless coaster at Six Flags New England, except for the drop is different, which I enjoy. And then it has like a helix towards the end. It does a couple things a little bit differently. It's missing one inversion, am I correct?
So
it's missing the zero G roll.
Speed, instead of having a zero G roll after the dive loop, it has like an upward turn and then a pretty straightforward drop into the corkscrews. So the ride is shaped a little differently. It's kind of has like a check mark shape a little bit.
Correct. Yeah. So I guess the corkscrews are in like a different location. Yeah.
And the final brakes are separated. There's an initial brake run and then like a U-turn back to the station that Batman.
But there's like
need.
four. Yeah, exactly. There's like 4 moments on this ride that are very lateral important. So when you get on top of the lift hill, you have a flat turn. And if it's on the outside of the turn, it like yanks you around that turn because it has surprisingly a lot of speed up there. And it's very scenic because you are on the edge of the park. So you can really enjoy the lush jungle nature around. And then you have a perfect first drop, of course.
Especially in the back row. After, great airtime.
Oh, 100%.
This is a great
if you are in the right
ride
of the back row, oh my God, you're coming off that turn on the outside of the turn and you just whip down. Then you have a vertical loop, perfectly fine, a dive loop, perfectly fine. And then you have the really nice over like the bank turn that goes through the vertical loop into that turn that Alex discussed that replaced or is actually like the original version of what is a zero G roll in New England. And because of that shape, you go into another drop. It's all kind of whizzy and kind of fast and snappy. So like I find this to be maybe the snappiest of the floatless coasters now I discuss it, really. I think back to it. Am I missing any? I'm missing a couple. I think I'm missing one in India. Anyway,
we haven't ridden the one at Tivoli Gardens. Neither of us have that one.
Also true.
And that's what this one is going to feel like if I had to guess.
I can see that because of the latter moments and the whippiness. And then you have your interlocking corkscrew followed by a kind of like a really nice flat transition into an upward helix. Overall, I mean, the ride is a joy. I actually ended up riding this more than I rode G5 because I just really enjoyed this ride. I think I rode this like 5 or 6 times. I will say there was no lions.
And
so it was nice.
Unlike G5, you're not really going to ride something quite like it again. It's similar, like we said, to Batman at Six Flags New England, but I think this one is far superior because of the great airtime moments in the back of the train coming off of the first drop and then coming off of the turnaround into the corkscrews, and then also better lateral moments, like you said. Everything that's different about this ride versus Batman in New England is related not just to laterals, but airtime. And what New England has instead of this is a shorter ride, because there's no helix, and an extra inversion, which doesn't really. I mean, zero G rolls on floorless coasters are awesome, but like you can get them on most of them. The stuff some of the choices that they made with Insane Speed, you don't see that as much on other floorless coasters. It feels very unique.
What kind of cracks me up is when I think about this coaster being built kind of on the side of a hill, because it is actually a terrain coaster, and then I think about Hair Raiser at Ocean Park. They both have very similar designs when it comes to how they put the station together and the queue. They have kind of like a wavy aesthetic to it, and everything's kind of nothing is really aligned. And then there's like 2 levels of walkways, and this thing too, like you walk on top of it when you enter the queue, but then when you exit, you walk the exact same path back but below it. It's almost like one of those freeways where one traffic direction is above, the other's in the opposite direction. So it's kind of funny, like the way they they somehow had to finesse a queue into here. It allows for some great views, but it's kind of funny because the queue and exit, I mean, like at one point it says like watch your head because you walk under the transfer track and like my head would hit the transfer track. Like that's how close you get to it. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, I don't even know there was a need for it to be that convoluted, Anyway, sidetrack, but funny.
So what do you think of the rest of John Fusan? Because got a little
So
more...
for me, when I went to John Fusan, I would say the park had like character. Typical Taiwanese vibes to it, it's kind of hard to describe, but there's just like a way of construction. They're using tile for everything, but it's also very hot and humid and tropical and lush. So stuff is kind of overgrown, kind of rusty here or there, but it has a lot of character. I felt the same way about Lipa Land, but I do think John Fusan is a nicer park. Also, a pretty good lineup of stuff. They have Vicky the Viking water park, which was tremendously popular when we were there. They have a little indoor area, and then they've got a couple flat rides here and there. The big Ferris wheel is pretty iconic. Unfortunately, when I went, it was one of its biggest maintenance things they've ever done to it. They pretty much took the whole thing apart and rebuilt it. So when I went, it was in the rebuilding phase. So I didn't get to ride it, take any cool photos, unfortunately. Also, most of the photos and videos I took are destroyed anyway. They're no longer, cannot get those back anyway. So it doesn't really matter whether or not I could go up there to take photos. Like my photos are gone. Anyway, I really enjoyed the park. I think I enjoyed this park tremendously more than Lipa Land. In fact, I was really glad that I came here second because it actually took like a long time to enjoy the park, and I had some food and I just kind of walked around and it was pretty leisurely. The layout makes absolutely no sense. To get to Insane Speed, I wandered to some backstage road. I don't know where I went. I was like, okay, this is definitely not it because now there's cars parked along the road. So this is not it. So I turned back around and walked around the water park in that direction to get to Insane Speed. So Insane Speed is really hard to find, which also made it, I think, a reason that, I rode it so many times. There was nobody there. It was great. But yeah, I really enjoyed the park. Disjointed, but a good lineup. Jungly, very pretty, character. Yeah, I don't know how your visit was because yours was quite a while before mine. But
mine was great, and it had more rides. I worry about this park because the number of rides that they've got seems to be dwindling. This park used to be full of oddball flat rides, and many of them became expensive maintenance headaches, and the park just kind of chopped them. They had one of the rare Huss flying can rides, or the Flick Flack. Tivoli Gardens used to have one too. That's another Tivoli Gardens similarity. They both had this weird Huss flat ride. They both had these little squirrely compact B&M Barlow's coasters. But I rode the Flick Flack. They used to have a Huss Top Spin. They had a Huss Flyaway, which was a very unique. I believe it was this one and the one in Six Flags New England. More parallels. They all have. And I don't know if Huss ever sold another one besides those two. The very uncomfortable flying position Huss Enterprise type ride. And then they had a Chance Inverter on my visit too, which we didn't ride, but it was open. The Flyaway was already done. That ride was abandoned, but it was kind of cool to see it in person. And they used to have a little log flume too, a tiny little log flume that I remember we just got absolutely soaked on this little log flume, and all that's gone, and they don't have a ton of new rides to replace them with.
I will say you definitely spend more time doing other things there. I really just spent most of my time on the coasters. But it was just, they were consistently running because it was busy enough for them to at least fill the train pretty quickly, but it was not busy. It was the perfect ideal busyness level for a Taiwanese theme park because it wasn't too busy where it's annoying because you're waiting in line. And of course, dispatches are, they're running one train on stuff. But then it wasn't so quiet that you have to wait for dispatches.
Right.
So it was one of those things where okay, it's great. So they're in business mode. They're not waiting between trains, unlike Lipa Land. So you show up, and if there's a seat available, you sit in it, and they go. And because of that method, it was every time I got out of for Insane Speed, for example, I would either miss one train and just be on the next one. As soon as I walked around, because it's kind of convoluted. By the time I got up there, I had to wait maybe a few seconds to get into the station and pick a seat. Or I would even catch the same train if I was quick enough. So, yeah, stuff like that is great. It was perfect.
Did you ride the power coaster?
And
did you have time for that?
No, I didn't ride the power. You know what? I made my choices carefully. And I'm a different man than most credit whores. And I I don't chase the credit like that. I had a great time with Insane Speed. I'm gonna ride Insane Speed a couple more times before I need to figure out how to get a taxi to my train station that's far away. It's I didn't really concern myself with neither of the smaller coasters at the parks that I did on that layover.
Yeah, fair enough. Did you go inside the indoor part, or did you just walk past it?
No,
it was cool. The indoor part is cool. It's just a big, multi-level play place.
Busy in the indoor part though. Like the family coaster looked cool, but it was like a bunch of kids and families, and like I will say maybe the G5 was kind of scary, and maybe Insane Speed was scary because I didn't see any kids at any time riding that. But man, the water park absolutely jam packed.
Yeah.
Every kiddie ride, every photo op, there's a slide that runs alongside one of the escalators. I mean, the park was very lively. Now think about it. I mean, like all the tables were taken everywhere. All the food stands were open and had people buying stuff. Like it was a very lively and very fun experience. Like I really enjoyed how lively the park felt, despite feeling much more located out in the boonies than, Lipa Land, which is a pretty easy drive from the Taichung train station. Either way, so I didn't even really bother with any of the kiddie stuff because it was super packed with it. And I recall seeing the station for the kiddie coaster, and it was so busy, and I was like, I have to kind of make my way back now. I don't really want to risk missing the train. I was gonna have dinner,
really much. I was just curious.
And it was one of those things where like it is a layover, so I was like, okay, well tomorrow morning at like 6 a.m, I have to get ready, get dressed, jump in the bus. I need to get back tonight and have dinner. And if anything happens with this train that I booked, I don't want to really be stuck like 2.5 hours from my layover hotel. That makes sense. So for me, it's all kind of like, all right, I've had my fill. I'm not gonna. What is that? What is it called when like it was good enough? Like I don't want to ruin a good thing. Ruin a good thing. Yeah. Anyway, so I didn't want to ruin a good thing, and I really had a great time. I said, okay, this is good. I got what I came for. I had a good time. Kiddie coaster or not, I am heading back. So. Yeah, either way, successful trip, very successful trip.
Yeah,
earlier this year, I went on another successful trip, which was a trip to South Korea, also for work. And this time around, we went, I went actually. This is one of the few times I go to a park that Alex hasn't been to.
You can dangle this one over my head for a long time.
This one and Wallaby Belgium, surprisingly, I can dangle over your head.
Yeah, Wallaby Belgium,
and this one
and Lade World.
Yeah, so with Lotte World Adventure on a Saturday, that was a holiday Saturday. Let me tell you this much. Whatever you do, buy tickets in advance, buy your Magic Pass in advance, and show up hella early. I'm thinking to myself, oh God, why am I here? I think I parked up at like 10 a.m. I think I was there like 8. I'm like, it's ice cold. It was actually it was late February. It was freezing. The lake was frozen. So actually Aquatrax, we'll talk about it in a little bit, didn't have any water in it because it was so cold. And I show up there in my theme park outfit and my pre-booked tickets and my passport in my hand because I needed to pick it up. And I could not find the end of the line. I mean, it is 8:30 in the morning, and it is packed everywhere. I mean, like it's filling up the brims. There's lines going around the mall like a million times. And eventually, there was a little bit of line cutting, I will say, which is kind of different than I expected. But either way, book your tickets in advance if you go on the weekend or a holiday, because the Lotte World Adventure is not big at all. You think, oh, it looks kind of big in photos. You have your Magic Island outdoor part, but the park is honestly tiny. And somehow they are getting how many millions of visitors a year? Like 4 million visitors annually?
That is like a huge cultural and activity center for the entire city. So like,
yeah, and it's next to, of course, the Lotte World Tower. I mean, Lotte World, that's why it's called Lotte World Adventure, because Lotte World itself is actually a giant complex with like a mall and the tallest tower in South Korea and all that kind of stuff, And then, of course, also the theme parks. I guess there's like 2 parks are connected into one. So all that considered, it's a very busy place. And there's an ice rink. There's so much going on. Anyway, so get your tickets early. Go find the correct entrance. There's several entrances. Go to the right entrance and pick up your tickets where you need to pick them up. And then if you are, and I'm not even have a promo code for Klook. Maybe I should be getting one for Coaster Kings. But if you do go, there is a Klook offer for anyone that's not Korean, and you can get a ticket plus a 3-ride Magic Pass. The Magic Pass is like 3 from the line passes. For some of these rides, including French Revolution, you need a virtual queue. If you don't show up at like 5 minutes after opening, your virtual queue spot is going to be like at 4 p.m. if there's even spots left. So like some of these rides you can't even ride unless you have a virtual queue that you have to pick up at the actual ride. And then that's a return time to wait 2 hours in the actual queue. So long story short, you want Magic Pass. Trust me, spend the money. get it and book it in advance because they will sell out a couple of days prior. But on Klook, there's a special version for non-South Korean people, I guess. So, you buy it as a tourist. It
international
gets a ticket
tourists.
in 3. Yeah, like a special package, and it gets you 1 ticket, of course, for admission, and 3 Magic Pass rides, 1 for each. And you can pick your rides. It includes all 3 coasters, and then like the log flume, the Indiana Jones style dark ride, some other pretty cool stuff. But of course, for me, I used it for the 3 coasters because, again, it was so crazy packed. Saturday holiday. I couldn't tell you which holiday it is. I need to look it up. I think it's some sort of like a really important national holiday that's war related. Someone told me what it was, and I don't want to misspeak. But late February. Anyway. That's what I did. Got the ticket, waited in line. Eventually, the park gates opened almost an hour prior to park opening. But by the time I made it through the whole queue, which is through the mall, for like a mile at least, and it's a very tiny park, the theme park. We finally got inside, and it felt like the park. It felt like entering a park in the middle of the day. Because even though we were in there, I was in there before the park even opened. Now I think about it, I was in there like 10 minutes before the park even opened, and the queues for every ride were completely full, like 2 hours already. It was like there was like 10,000 people already in the freaking complex. Then the park hadn't even opened yet. That's how crazy this place gets. It almost reminded me of, I think I told you when I was texting you because we just got on Tokyo Disney. I was like, oh my God, it's like Tokyo Disney. Like everyone, the mother is here. It's like early in the morning and there's thousands, tens of thousands of people lined up in these queues that go to mystery places. I don't know if I'm in the right queue. Like it was so crazy. And then when the park opened at 10, I think I actually got on French Revolution before the park even opened. And at that point, they were already distributing for 4 p.m., which at that point I had to be on the bus to the airport already. So I was so happy I bought the Magic Pass because the Magic Pass was sold out. They were already distributing for 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. for French Revolution, and it was not even park open yet. The line for French Revolution, for those that had a reservation for the first hour, was already at 2 hours. It was like insane. Like it was absolutely insane. So whatever you do, go there prepared in the off chance that you're there on like a crazy busy weekend. And usually I hear it's really, really busy most of the time. So even though I've seen some videos online where it's not busy, I don't know when they're going because all I've heard is that it's always busy. Anyway, now that I spent like 5 minutes talking about that, we might as well just start talking about French Revolution because that was the priority coaster for me, which is the 1989 custom Vekoma Looper that is themed to France, but also to Egypt, I think.
Naturally.
Because the trains look mad Egyptian, and then there's a part of the ride where you go through Egypt, and the track is white. And then you go through Paris, where the track is blue for most of the ride. And on social media, most people think this coaster is AI, or doesn't actually exist, even if you specifically say where it's located. Because it's an indoor building, it looks like a miniature coaster from a distance, I guess, and videos.
Yeah, a lot of people comment on the video saying it looks like a toy.
Yeah,
it kind of looks like it's inside someone's house.
Yeah. Oh, this isn't a rich kid's bedroom. It's one of my favorite comments.
Without the context, it's like, yeah, I could see how that would be more believable than believing that this is in some wild, opulent shopping mall. It just doesn't. It's a little.
It's funny because everyone has their reason. They're like, well, their hands aren't up, so it's fake. And or they're like, nobody streams that kind of drop. It's not real audio. And I'm like, people have the most wild reasons to believe why it's not that and to explain it on a Facebook video. Well, the caption of the video says, right, manufacturer, park location, country location. I'm like, you Google this for 1 second and you know exactly what it is and it's real. You can even watch a cute little on-ride video of it. Instead, everyone's arguing back and forth online saying it's not real. Anyway, so it worked great for us because our video is done so well. I will post another one of them when this episode goes live, I guess. But yeah, French Revolution feels to me, and I don't want to all talking, but Alex haven't been. So actually, Alex, what do you want to hear about this coaster?
I just want to talk about what a cool layout it has and the fact that it's just the vertical loop that like one midway like goes right through it. And
which I didn't find. I looked for it like crazy, but I guess it is real.
And
it's not AI.
It's just a really neat layout. A lot of it is enclosed, like the first half of it, a lot of it's in the dark. So even if you watch a POV of this ride on YouTube, there's some good ones out there. There's still plenty of surprises. It's just a fascinating layout and a great presence. And I like to think this ride was partially inspired by Everland, which is Korea's other, one of their other major parks. And for the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, Everland opened Rolling X Train, which is a Aero double loop, double cork.
Aero looper.
And I'd like to think that Everland inspired Lotte World to go with a similar ride system, but obviously something that was more custom. And Vekoma was able to deliver something really special for this park. I'd like to think that Arrow could have also risen to the occasion and built this ride, but I don't think Arrow could have built French Revolution. It's just too articulated.
So to me, French Revolution, despite being quite a bit older, it's actually like the same time frame as Goederix, which doesn't quite feel similar because Goederix is like is a mass looper, but I would say it tracks pretty similar. You use the same trains now. Anyway, to me, it feels like it's in a unique group of Vekoma loopers, of Vekoma coasters, with Space Mountain in Paris, Discovery Mountain, because the way it does things is super unconventional. You start off with your lift hill out of the station, and you have like a small drop, and then like an airtime hill, and then you kind of have a turn into a helix. In the very beginning of the ride, there's a big helix, and then you have kind of like mine training moments, and like some tunnels and some switches, and then you have a drop. And a lot of this is actually in the dark because a lot of it's hidden. You have your vertical loop, after the drop, and then you come into this mid-course brake run, and then you have another drop into a really intense helix that's around a fountain, and then you come into the brakes, and it's iconic. And the ride isn't super long, but it's long enough. Like, I kind of call it like three distinct sections. So you have your first section that is, your drop and your hill, and then you have your helix, and you have your kind of like your switch track inside and some tunnel light effects. That's like part one. Then part two is you have your drop and your vertical loop, and then you have your S element into the next set of brakes. And then part three is, of course, the drop in the helix. And in a way, when I think, okay, three parts to a Vekoma looper, I think Discovery Mountain. Discovery Mountain or Space Mountain in Paris is very clearly separated by like the three distinct sequences of events. You have your launch into the giant turn that has the sidewinder, and then you have a brake run, and then you have your downwards hopping corkscrew into the next lift, and then you have your big drop, helix, tongue, that kind of stuff. So to me, it felt very distinct like that. It tracked similarly, and to me, it felt like they designed this coaster because they had some really abstract idea and some weird space to work with. And I feel like whenever that happens, they create the best damn coasters, because now you have a super unique looper that's like half mine train, half looper, half coaster in the dark. Very distinct elements. Beautiful coaster. Tracks pretty well. Of course, a little bit rough. It's a 1989 Vekoma looper. But overall, I created such a unique coaster. I find that this and Space Mountain Paris like their own unique caliber of coaster. Like they're like own category to me. Like the first, I could not help but feel like I was riding an alternate universe, Egyptian French themed Space Mountain Paris.
1989 was such a great year for Vekoma. Vekoma fucking ate that year because they built Goederix, they built Kamikaze, which is now Blue Hawk at Six Flags Over Georgia, and they built this.
Three amazing classic loopers that are withstanding the test of time, because all of them are around. Two of them have been upgraded to MK1212 trains. Blue Hawk and Goederix are both on the new Vestas trains. And honestly, I feel like this coaster doesn't need it, French Revolution, but it would always be appreciated. But they've all aged so well, and I don't see them going anywhere. And even in this timeline, I feel like we're getting to the point where, like, when you ride the old Arrow, it's like, all right, it's an old coaster, maybe it's time for it to go. But I don't think that at all for this ride. I don't think that at all of Goederix. Like, these are coasters that even in today's landscape are perfectly good additions and important parts of the lineup. I would say French Revolution may still be the most popular ride at Lotte World Adventure, even though the lines get pretty crazy for Atlantis Adventure. Capacity-wise, is not nearly as good, because I will say that they were running two trains of French Revolution, and they were getting them out without stacking. Like they were actually doing pretty good, and it's pretty high capacity. But it's just like the most iconic ride, don't you think? Like when I think of Lotte World, you think of that blue coaster around the fountain with the loop with the walkway through it. Like that's the coaster of Lotte World Adventure.
I still think of everything else in that park.
And it doesn't feel at all like it's out of place.
As a supporting act.
In fact,
for French Revolution.
In fact, when earlier in this episode, I was making a mistake of almost comparing French Revolution as being in the same time frame as Gravity Max, because in my head, it's still such a modern feeling attraction. Like it fits so well in that park. It doesn't feel like it's one of those classic loopers out there. The fact that it's 1989 is actually kind of shocking because I completely forgot that it's that old, because it feels so right being there. So great coaster. But yeah, get there early, get your whatever you need to get to make sure you get on it, because I know several people that either only got a slot for the very end of the day or missed out on the coaster because they were not able to get a virtual queue, even though they tried in the first hour of the park. So like, I mean, maybe it shows how popular the ride really truly is, that you can not ride it without really trying your best for it. So anyway, moving on to another very unique coaster. I think all these coasters are really unique now I think about it. I'm going to go and talk about Comet Express before we finish with Atlantis Adventure. So Comet Express, I could not tell you where I was in the beginning. First, I was looking inside the park. Because this is my mistake, but I didn't do a lot of research on this park. I kind of wanted to be surprised a little bit. And boy, was I surprised with everything. But I didn't really know where it was, and then we realized that it was on the Magic Island part of the park. Which Magic Island is very tiny, by the way. Like, I don't know how they fit all these coasters there. Well, I know how they did it because they put Comet Express underground. So there's a major drop tower, like a little monorail. There's, I think, a swinging ship, some other flat rides, Atlantis Adventure. Yeah, and then Comet Express, but because it's underground, it all fits on this little island. And then there's like a little castle that does projection and fireworks shows. Very compact, and you take a bridge to the inside part of the park. And everything in this complex is so tiny and compact that I cannot believe the attendance they get. But it's also wall-to-wall people. Like, it is, like, you know, when you're at a concert and like you're trying to find your party, you have to like wiggle your way through the concert crowd to get to your party. I tried to be the person that just stays in the spot the whole time. But when I was at Lottie World, I had to wiggle through the parties to try and get anywhere. I tried to get to the Magic Pass queue for Atlantis Adventure. I had to wiggle my way through it. I mean, there's lines for everything everywhere. Like, I'm surprised people know where they're standing in line for. Because, yeah, no, seriously, like, it is wall-to-wall people. And it's like, it's pretty impressive, actually. I will say I was pretty bewildered. I mean, it was wall-to-wall people, like capacity numbers. You know, like in America, you have a little sticker that says like maximum capacity. And that doesn't exist at Lottie World Adventure. Anyway, so Comet Express is a Intamin spinning coaster that is a twist and turn coaster. And it is underground, and it doesn't really have any sort of elevation change, which is a fascinating thing because the coaster is massive. But the most you'll elevate is the height of a helix. So it's like helix up, helix down, helix up, helix down. And it's pretty much like a launched, with tire drives, like a launched kind of coaster where like you take off and it's a really big ride, which is what really surprised me because like I thought I was going to die. Like, it was so insane. So you left the station and you go through like this dark ride looking thing, and then suddenly like the tire drives are just like driving up, but you're spinning. And so like you're spinning a little bit, and then suddenly like, you hit this helix out of control, and then it's S-turn, helix, tunnel, S-turn, helix, and like you're spinning like crazy, and it just keeps going. You're like, when is it going to end? It's helix after helix after helix after S-turn, transitional tunnel, lighting effects. It was like such a trip. And like I'd heard stories of Comet Express, you know, Comet Vomit, as Alex has called it in the past. I'd heard stories, but man, nothing prepared me for the absolute craziness that was Comet Express. First of all, the ride's built in 1995, so I didn't know they could do this kind of stuff in 95. Because even though it's a very rudimentary, basic ride, it's insane. And then, yeah, the subcontractor was actually Giovanola, so that explains a lot. But if you were interested, you can go to RCDB, and there's actually a layout of the ride, and the ride is massive. It must take up pretty much the entire underground area.
I remember looking at the.
It must take up pretty much the whole underground area of Magic Island. I mean, it must. It's so big. And
there was some pretty decent theming, but there that they added, like, with the park, because the whole thing opened in '89, the indoor part and the outdoor part. And my guess is that they still have another dark ride, kind of a It's a Small World-esque kind of dark ride thing there. But my guess is that they had another underground ride there too, and then replaced.
They must have, because it does feel kind of pieced together. It was like, oh, here's a hallway that's like, you know, too obvious that it was not meant to be that if it was an original design. And then you have another couple of helices and some crazy stuff, and another hallway. Like, it felt like there was transitional moments on the ride. But yeah, if you look on RCDB at the Comet Express, there's a couple of photos, one of which is a skill model.
The model was really cute.
It'll kind of explain like details. How freaking wild it is. Yeah, so in the beginning you have that weird tunnel that has the pink stripes on it, and that is really what's kind of like, what kind of feels dark ridey. And after that, I mean, shit gets is crazy. Like, this gets absolutely insane. Yeah, I think that's the direction it goes in, if I'm correct. Yeah, because the queue's right next to it. Yeah, you'll leave that way. Yeah. And then you come back at the end. Yeah, I don't know. Like,
And these are rare
I couldn't. If I could not get up and walk out of this
Intamin
coaster, I was
twist and
so dizzy.
Coasters are very unique. There's another one in Taiwan, actually, at the third of the three major Taiwan parks that I went to at Lipo Land. Or not Lipo Land, sorry, Lifu Village, which is in...
Yeah, I really should go there soon.
Yeah,
I've been
Taipei.
close to it so many times.
There, yeah. Their signature coaster is an Intamin Twisted Impulse. So unlike the other major players in Taiwan, they never did get like a coaster that was particularly unique in the marketplace. But they do have a really nice collection of rides. It's a big Intamin showcase park, and one of their family coasters is an Intamin Twist and Turn coaster. It's got that same weird ride vehicle that Comet Space has. Like the lead car is like this is literally like a little asteroid. Like being held
and
on.
then the last coaster I want to talk about at this park is the coveted, and I'm really glad I got on this because I think I'm technically too tall. The legendary Atlantis Adventure, which is a Intamin Aquatrax. And what does that mean? Absolutely nothing, because there was no aqua. So I guess what they were doing is they were trying to come up with their version of a water coaster that was also like kind of more like an Intamin. It was a precursor to Maverick. Let's face it. It was like, oh, we can do something snappy
Maverick
with small vehicles.
Being designed and talked about, and then the Aquatrax, the name Aquatrax was being thrown around a lot, to the point where people even thought like that the initial development process of Maverick was that the ride started out as an Aquatrax and then it kind of evolved into its own.
Which would explain that weird lift hill on, because here's the thing, the Aquatrax, it is designed to look like a water ride, and it's designed by embellishments, theming, and effects. It's supposed to mimic almost like a water coaster. So even though it's a balls to the wall at some parts, Crazy Intamin, really, it was designed to look like a water coaster, like a hybrid attraction, which in the winter you could just turn off the water. So you have these troughs that are attached to the actual track all around the ride, where it's supposed to be a water ride. And then they just spray water in there, but there's no like flume or anything. And then there's water effects periodically. So there's a couple of drops, and then also a lift hill that's outside that are all themed to being like almost like a log flume. And then the rest of it is this track that sticks out of this well-themed tower, where the coaster part happens, but really it's just one big Intamin roller coaster that now feels really awkward to me. Like, I feel like there's a reason there's one Aquatrax, and even though everyone can say what they want about this being a cool ride, it's a cool ride, but it makes sense that they never did it again. Because I write this, I'm like, this makes absolutely no sense. It is the dumbest, no offense, the kind of the dumbest thing I've seen. It's like we're faking a water coaster, but it's actually like a perfectly intense, airtime laden launch coaster. Like, why did the water part have to be a thing? You know, like, why is there an awkward lift hill in the middle of the ride? This could have been another launch, whatever, you know? So that to me felt super out of place. The ride itself uses lap bars. It's almost like the first straddle coaster, because you really do sit like a straddle coaster, except for you see a little bit more elevated and you pull your lap bar down and it's on your lap, and it feels just like the new straddle coasters, except for a little bit more sturdy and not as low to the ground. Like you are sitting like on top of a horse almost.
That ride's crazy to me. How it's 4 bench vehicles, right? That seat 8 passengers.
Yeah, and it yeah, exactly. And it's one articulating piece. So there's no 2 pieces that articulate. Like it's one, which in the back is crazy. And so the ride itself is very fascinating, and it's a great ride. I know I called it dumb earlier, but it's more of a conceptual thing. I think conceptually, there's a reason there's one, period. But so you'll leave the station, and you kind of queue for a launch, and then you launch into this insane indoor top hat. And when I say insane, it's like, holy shit. Like, you start your ride like that, you're holding onto your lap bars in this weird straddle position, and then like you're launching over this top hat at this insane speed, and it's like a little 8-passenger vehicle that like seems too big for the movements that this ride makes, because the ride isn't big. You know, it's like a super intense little top hat, and then you have some like an S-turn, and you have like, you know, a dive around the outside of the tower, and it all happens really quick, and it's really freaking cool. You're like, oh my god, I cannot believe it. Like, I'm riding the Aquatrax. So this thing is wild. This is crazy. Can't believe it. And then you do another turn around the ride. I think you kind of like, you're inside the show building, the tower, and then you come outside and you have a drop into what is like a fake splashdown. It's like a tiny little airtime hill into a very sharp turn at the water level, which again, I didn't have any water because even the lake around Magic Island was frozen. There was like a lot of ice because it was like so cold. It was the winter that I rode. Anyway, so you come around and usually you skate by the water, so water effects, and then you slow down and you enter what is supposed to be a dark ride scene, but it's really like, it's not all that. It's just like what animatronic is dead. Then you turn around and then the ride just gets awkward to me because then you have what's supposed to be the water coaster. So this is, even though that drop I just described where like you fake splash into the water, that also has a trough around it. At this point, you're still hauling ass and you're still like in that mode of like, wow, this crazy little spaghetti roll, that's well themed. Like this is crazy. And then you have your airtime hill into the fake splashdown. That's all still great, even though it's at that point, the very end, that is themed to being a water ride. Now you enter this lift hill that's themed to a trough, like a flume trough. And then at the top of the lifts, you make your turnaround. And then you have just a straight drop down, and then just another little airtime moment, I guess, if I describe it correctly. And then you go into the final breaks. So that final part of the ride that is themed to being a water ride, I don't know, man. Like the space in Magic Island is super tiny. I feel like instead of doing this lift hill and then doing this one drop that's supposed to mimic a water ride drop, they could have done a lot more with that limited space. Because now, to me, it ended like on a kind of like on a weird note. I was like, wow, okay, this is it, I guess. Like once you have your first half of the ride and then you kind of, it's kind of over. The action's kind of over. You have your weird, awkward dark ride moment, your awkward lift hill, and your awkward splashdown.
If I didn't know any better, I think you were describing Powder Keg at Silver Dollar City.
Oh my god, this is totally kind of like a powder keg moment.
Because the
your
first half is like
wow, this is
insane,
wild.
And then you go up a lift hill and down a pretty straightforward drop, and then it's over. And the water
pretty much. I didn't even think about that.
There, even though it's supposed to be.
Oh my god, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I guess the water component is there more on normal days when it's not like, because I'm sure they can do it because it's literally freezing. Like the whole ride would get ruined.
Was supposed to have a splashdown at the bottom of that drop, and then they never finished building it. They just gave up on it halfway through. There's one concrete trough for the splashdown, and that was as far as they got with that. But that's what it sounds like you're describing me, where you have like this ride that starts out amazing and has all this momentum, and then they kill the momentum for the sake of taking you up an unnecessary lift hill. And then, I mean, at least with Powder Keg, they were just trying to recycle the coaster that was there before, the Buzzsaw Falls Premier Rides water coaster. But with the Aquatrax with Atlantis, it just feels like they really wanted a water coaster, but water coasters were struggling with their reliability at the time. But then they also, like, how Launch Coaster was very tempting.
I mean, the concept of a launched water coaster is really cool, but the thing is, nothing about this is a real water coaster. You don't use
simulated.
A flume. It's
having
all
these,
simulated.
Like,
so they went through
troughs that the track is laying in.
Yeah, where they literally spray water into it.
They're just sprayed
like mist.
Water. It's like, what it like.
Yeah, and all of it felt, and then like, okay, so you're themed to being in a boat, but really sitting on like almost like a horse level, like above the boat. The whole thing was such a weird concept. And at no point, and again, I didn't get the full water experience, but it's not like there's water running down the troughs. Like all of it is just sprayed in from the side, and who knows if it's actually still working properly? Because I haven't been there in the summer, but I can imagine this Joe getting old after 20 years. Like, are you really going to maintain every little sprinkler in the trough for this fake water coaster? It doesn't require any sprinklers to run. It's not like it requires the water. So that whole aspect felt kind of weird to me, and I almost wish it did that whole song and dance in the beginning. I wish it started off like, oh, cute water ride, and now we're launching into some crazy top hat. Now it's balls to the wall.
Events are happening at the wrong time.
Yeah, like the coolest part of the ride was by far the beginning. We had the really like thematic tunnel that you then launch through into the top hat. It gets all crazy, airtime. Like laterals, you're like, oh my god, I cannot believe this thing is real, because it really is quite an amazing first half. I just wish that the events were flipped, because then it really let you down at the end. You're like, all right, okay, I've seen enough. But I really did enjoy it, but not as much as French Revolution. It was cool to ride it, and it's a very cool concept, and the riding position makes it a much more intense ride, and it really is a cool ride. It's just that the Aquatrax, let's just keep it at one. There's no need to ever build one of these again, So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about these unique coasters.
Nonetheless, I look forward to going here with you in the summertime. And
we'll go. We're gonna do a whole Korea trip. Well, summertime. It's hot. Maybe the fall or spring. Yeah. But yeah. So I guess like we did have a pretty nice smattering of unique coasters. Comet Express, unlike anything I've ever ridden. French Revolution is unlike almost anything I've ever ridden. Of course, this thing is unlike anything I've ever ridden. Then you have your Tilt Coaster, unlike anything I've ever ridden. And then you have your really nice jungle-y floorless coaster and dive machine in Taiwan as well. So overall, a pretty cool collection of coasters that we had talked about today. All of them on the clock, getting paid by the company to be there. That's kind of fun.
Getting paid to ride roller coasters, man. That's the flight attendant dream.
Yeah, I mean, I don't make that much, to be honest, so I feel like I made a loss on that layover, but it's fine because I got my per diem didn't cover that. But
talking about Atlantis Adventure and Gravity Max, like I'm so excited for Cedar Point next month because we get to ride the Maverick Aquatrax and we get to ride Siren's Curse, our American
we get to ride the
Max.
developed versions of these concepts. Really, we do. And if you look at Maverick's layout, I can totally see how maybe some of that was really inspired to be kind of Aquatraxy, especially that first lift. Because why it's not like it's a straight launch with a top hat.
Intamin Blitz coaster. There was no Intamin multi-launch coaster system that existed. That was all language. That was the nuances just weren't there. All we could talk about when Maverick was announced was how the closest thing that existed to Maverick by far was Atlantis Adventure. And that there were a lot of changes that happened during the development process for Maverick, but that the similarities are weirdly uncanny, especially the second half with the launch and its proximity to the water. And then there was changes that they made. Like obviously they took out the barrel roll and they did like,
just doing all the low to the ground turning and stuff, that feels kind of Aquatraxy because, of course, the Aquatrax does that at several points where you have like sharp turns that are supposed to batter water. And who knows, like maybe they completely threw the whole idea out and you start afresh with Maverick. But I think there's a couple of points there. And I cannot help but think that weird lift hill in the beginning could have been a holdover from the Aquatrax because why would Maverick have that LSM launch system lift hill that feels like a lift hill? That's exactly what Aquatrax does. It uses LSMs just like that incredible first launch, except for in the second half of the ride, again, same situation. Oh, no, kidding. Reverse.
Maverick improved
Maverick
on the
starts
concept
with that.
by doing the
Maverick
fake lift hill first.
Starts with that,
and then the launch. Well, you know what coaster does the launch first and a fake lift hill second? It's an Intamin launch coaster where the lift hill isn't anything there but aesthetic, is California Screamin'. And they were designed at the same time. Screamin' and Aquatrax.
God, California Screamin' has a bit of an Aquatrax vibe to it as well. Just like shape, trackness. I guess maybe that was just what Intamin was on in that era. And it created like three different unique rides.
Everybody was drawing comparisons between Maverick and Aquatrax. But I guess in fairness, the ride that it really resembled the most at the time was California Screamin'.
But California Screamin' only did that LSM because Disney wanted a lift hill look. And of course, they were already installed the LSM system for the launch. I think for Aquatrax and Intamin, for Atlantis Adventure and Maverick, there may have been actually more of a crossover there, because even the actual launch system type feels it's the exact same, if I'm not mistaken. You know, the same kind of LSMs that are on the track. So, yeah, that is the situation.
The time, they weren't interested in doing a top hat on that ride because they had the biggest top hat in the world. They already had Top Thrill Dragster, and so they were like, okay, well, we're going to build a different kind of roller coaster.
Well, I like to believe that maybe it's just the Aquatrax holdover.
Also true. I think that's it.
But the Beyond Vertical Drop at the end.
Beyond Vertical Drops were all the rage at the time. Everybody wanted one.
No, it's so funny, these trends, right? Oh my God, we should do an episode on all the trends. You know, like discuss. Oh, we should do like a timeline, like discuss the trends. I'm gonna write this down. Like a coaster trend of like every 5 years or every 10 years, like a decade, and we can do a different decade every time. Yeah. Okay, trendy coasters. That's my name
really
of it.
Had that lift hill just because, just like Atlantis Adventure, they had it for the sake of having it, not because it was necessary. They wanted a launch coaster that also had this moment of the ride where you're slowly going up the lift hill and having like that suspense factor, and then going down the drop. Whereas at the time, with a launch coaster with a top hat, you know, you wouldn't have gotten that same kind of experience without like a holding brake or something. But, you know, that's normal now. That's like Gotham City Escape with its little brake run before it goes down it has a cresting of the lift moment on its own top hat because you're up there for so long. But Maverick, they were just, you know, like, well, a lift hill. It's just going to be a lift hill because we feel like it. And that's good enough.
That's right.
Good enough reason.
Speaking of good enough, I think we should bring this episode to an end. Do you agree?
Yeah, because you ran out of things to talk about.
Not only that, also we're already at like the hour 15 mark almost. So before we let you guys go, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Coaster Kings Radio. It's already 11 in this season. We talk a lot about the UK this season. We did the whole road trip around the UK, so make sure to listen to those episodes. We had Flamingo Land last week, we've done Thorpe Park, Alton Towers, all that. So definitely check that out. And if you do like hearing about our Asia coaster adventures, which I know are a little bit less popular than some of our more Western stuff, let's be honest, we do have 2 episodes this season that are China related, so definitely check those out. One is the Phantom Wild Ningbo episode, and one is the episode where we go to Colorful Yunnan Paradise and the Shaman Parks. Those are already live. Other than that, leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening: Pocket Cast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then we will make sure to catch you guys next week. Thank you for listening. Bye.